welcome every one of you. I would like to thank you very much for your presence here today for this presentation of the COP25. I would like to welcome the Ambassador of Chile, Juan Angulo, and the Ambassador of the European Union, Hugo Astuto, who are going to join me in making this presentation about the COP25 and about the position of the European Union and Chile as a presidency in this meeting. As you know, between the 2nd and the 13th of December, Madrid is going to hold the 25th Conference of the Parts of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, commonly known as COP25. Chile was supposed to hold this meeting, but the government decided to cancel the meeting in Santiago on the 30th of October 2019 in view of some difficult internal situations that the country was undergoing. The Spanish commitment to the objectives of the Paris Agreement led to the decision to step up to avoid postponing the meeting, and in consultations with Chile and with the United Nations to offer Madrid as an alternative venue to hold the COP25. There is no time to lose. Decision making must start now. It has been a race against the clock to organize this meeting that will gather over 20,000 participants, setting up all the infrastructures and all the service required in just 30 days. Chile will maintain the presidency of the COP25 and will have a leading role on the development and coordination of the international negotiations. As a country, Spain, as a country which is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, we have incorporated the fight against climate change as a transversal axis of all public policies. And our aims, short term, 2030, are to reduce greenhouse emissions by 20% and to have 74% of renewables in our electrical generation. Despite some progress in achieving the objective of the Paris Agreement, the overall scenario on climate actions remains grim. Can you sigue. No es esa, no, come on. Okay. This is a publication is just 2 days ago from the International Weather Organization that points out how no matter the decisions taken in order to reduce emissions, greenhouse emissions, CO2 keeps on steady growing up. And in 2019, the figure has been the highest ever. So not only we are not reducing the emissions, the greenhouse emissions, but on the contrary, we are increasing them. So the reductions have to be more and more severe in the coming future. There is no sign of slowdown, let alone on decline, in greenhouse gases concentration in the atmosphere. The next slides I would like to present to you are related to a report from the World Economic Forum. This is it, the World Economic Forum on Global Risk Report in 2019. Let me just show you here. As you see, there are different risks. Now there are economic risks, environmental risks, geopolitical, technological risks. Okay. Those risks here, extreme weather events, failure to climate change mitigation and adaptation, natural disasters, biodiversity loss and water crisis are on top. So it means that the priority, the highest risk that we are facing in the coming future are risks related to environment. If you see, this is in terms of likelihood, these three priorities related to environment in terms of impact. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can imagine, and some of them repeat in both. So you can imagine the problem that we are going to face in the future if we are not able to tackle this situation in the coming years. No? So global challenges are intensifying, and the need of global collaboration is essential. We are facing a growing number of complex and interconnected challenges, and the political and economic situation of the world today.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. A big thank you also for organizing this event tonight, and to you all for coming on a Friday evening. And a big thank you to Spain for organizing such a big event at a very short notice under the presidency of Chile. The fight against climate change is a priority for the European Union. It's a priority for India. It's an existential issue, I think, for the world. We, as the Ambassador said earlier, we do not have a moment to waste. We have scientific evidence pointing to the need to act urgently. We need to act, and we need to act collectively, all together, for the sake of future generations. And we need to accelerate transformative change. The EU and India are in a position to offer leadership to the international community. It's particularly needed now, in view of COP25 in Madrid in December, in a few days. It's a fact there is still a significant gap between the level of current global efforts and what would be required to keep world temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius, let alone 1.5 degrees. So we need to scale up global ambitions if we want to achieve the target set in Paris. It's still possible if provided global CO2 emissions reach net zero around 2050. And the EU is committed towards this vision. We are committed to a vision for a climate-neutral Europe by 2050. The new President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has put it unequivocally in her address in the European Parliament. Let me quote, "Climate change is about all of us. We have the duty to act and the power to lead." COP25 in Madrid will offer the opportunity to all of us to upgrade national commitments globally and to set out long-term visions. With the rule book agreed already in the past COP, the focus is now shifting to the implementation of the targets set nationally and to assess the adequacy of the global ambition. We shall also address some outstanding issues left aside at the last COP, such as the working of international carbon markets. And the EU is committed to working with all parties to develop a robust and comprehensive set of rules on voluntary cooperation under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. We also have to review the international mechanism on loss and damage occurring as a result of climate change. That's another substantial priority for COP25 in Madrid. And finally, from the EU side, we want to advance a discussion on the gender action plan in order to mainstream gender issues as a cross-cutting priority in all our activities against climate change. And I'm proud to say that the EU walks the talk. We are committed to the goal of scaling up the mobilization of international climate finance to the US $100 billion per year from 2020 through 2025 in order to support climate action in the developing world. And the EU is already the first provider of funds globally to support the fight against climate change. We provide almost 40% of the total. The EU and its member states together have contributed 21.7 billion euro in public climate finance in 2018 alone. And the European Investment Bank has announced just a few days ago the decision to stop all financing to fossil fuel energy projects from 2021 in order to foster the transition towards green economy. So in conclusion, The international community needs to act cohesively and consistently, and face the challenge. India is a central player in this respect, and since 2016, I'm glad to say that we have an India-EU Clean Energy and Climate Partnership to advance the greening of the economy for a better future. COP25 in Madrid is a key opportunity to achieve progress, to achieve concrete deliverables, to scale up ambitions. And we look forward to working with all our international partners to make it a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Jose, for hosting us today and giving us the opportunity with the Ambassador of the European Union, Hugo Astuto, to share with you some ideas of what will be the COP25 and how we see it coming in just a couple of days from now. I will try to show you what we are thinking as our duties as presidency. But first, I would like to start saying that well, the COP changed to Madrid, and that was unexpected for us, and it shows a change of the priorities of our government, Chilean government, because of the social movements that are taking place now in the country. It was a very tough decision when the president decided to change to Madrid, and even if we change to Madrid, we want to assure all parties our commitment with the success and with the process, and that Chile will fulfill all the duties that the presidency must fulfill in order to have a successful COP. As Jose, as Hugo have said, Chile has deep conviction that we need to act urgently. We have no time to lose on the fight against climate change. The change in the agenda should be towards a more just, human, and sustainable development. That is something that a lot of countries are repeating, but we think that we have the opportunity to put into action. Of course, I have to thank again the government of Spain for having taken this challenge. When Chile decided in Katowice to present his candidacy for the host the COP25, that was after Brazil declined to host it, and of course was a challenge for us. We had only 9-10 months. Normally these COPs are prepared with a couple of years in advance. So if it was very complicated for us, I can imagine how difficult it is for Spain to organize that in only was 2 or 3 weeks, and we are very recognized of that effort, and it's only a testimony to the solid ties between our two countries, and we are very happy that Spain agreed in hosting. Well, we think that this task is a collective task. No country, no state can by themselves solve the problem, and we think that it is not only the member states, the parties of the United Nations UNFCCC convention, is that we need the participation of every sector. We are talking about private sector, we are talking about civil society, with all the components of civil society. We are talking about the scientific community, science, I will refer to that later, and academia. All of these groups and others, of course, are part of the solution, and all this should be taken into consideration. That is one first message. Second message is ambition. Ambition is a key word that should be every time repeated. We consider that the moment is crucial. Every country should make additional efforts to increase ambition. We launched in September a Climate Ambition Alliance during the conference of the United Nations Climate. We are trying to support through this alliance strong actions on adaptation and mitigation. This alliance is composed by more or less more than 50 countries and other groups, non-state actors. We need to reach not 2 degrees Celsius, but at maximum 1.8, 1.5. I'm sure every one of you read the report earlier this week about that if we are doing what we are doing right now, will be more than 2%, 2 degrees. And that is very dangerous when you are considering between normal people, they consider what is the difference between 2 and 2.2 or 2.5. But it makes a huge difference. It is not just half a degree for effects in glaciers, effects in every weather phenomena we are experiencing now. So this alliance of climate ambition try to help the countries to take commitments. In our case, it's carbon neutrality by 2050. Not all the countries in the world are on this path. We are trying to support this and through ambition, especially now that the NDCs will be reformulated. This is the first period of reformulation of the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Of course, we are trying also to include in this neutrality by 2050 measures to strengthen ocean and forests, which are 2 main contributors to climate stability. Third message is adaptation. Mitigation is one, ambition, adaptation is second. Adaptation is very much something to be considered by the developing countries. Most of the countries in the developing world are suffering the results of the climate change. They are not huge producers, so we cannot ask too much mitigation, but still. But in the adaptation part is the way the countries have to respond in a sustainable way to all of this extreme flood, large-scale wildfires in countries like Sweden. We have had wildfires in autumn, totally unexpected. We have had rains everywhere, storms. All these changes are also a trigger for social conflicts. I'm not saying that in our country that was the case, but in other countries we have the social conflicts also produced via or triggered by changing climate. Developing countries, as I said, are especially affected. So we will support all the. There is a high-level meeting on adaptation that we will support in COP25, and we are trying to help or see how countries could cope with all these extreme weather changes. Another key message would be the one related to ocean. We are trying to make a blue ocean, a blue COP ocean, and I said we highlight it is one ocean. It's not oceans. It's not plural. We consider ocean is one linked element, and what is happening in the Atlantic will affect what is happening in Antarctica and in other parts of the world. We, of course, as a country, we are very linked with the ocean. The sea is 4,200 kilometers of coastline. But we would like to encourage parties to find links between ocean and climate change. If you read the Paris Agreement, there are almost no direct reference to ocean. And of course, ocean is very important if you consider that the capacity of capture carbon, for instance. Ocean is important because can also be a source of emissions. we think that if countries take into consideration into their own NDCs aspects linked to ocean, we will tackle some of the problems that now we are facing. We are talking about acidification of the ocean. We are talking about plastics, microplastics. There are islands of plastics in some parts of the Pacific Ocean. We are talking about how the population who are living on the coastal areas are adapting to changes in fish stock, for instance, in these species that are highly that travel without knowing any border, so they are not now on the normal areas where they used to be. So people who are living on those resources are not able to live from them. So and that is caused because of the health. It is bad health of the ocean. So that will be another primary subject for us, the Blue COP for COP25. There are some topics also that we would like to enhance on this COP, and one of those is that every time now, as Ambassador said, almost all the rule book of the Paris Agreement is agreed, but we need concrete climate actions, because the rule book we consider, or the Paris Agreement, will not by itself solve the problem. We need to put what is written into action, and that is called climate actions. When you talk about climate actions, you need also the ways to who is doing the climate action and how this climate action will be financed. In the case of who is doing that, we are hoping to boost this Alliance for Climate Action, which is a new alliance recently created. And this alliance is incorporating, what is important, local governments. Again, it is not just a state problem, it is also a local government and community, state level, cities, etc. There are also some topics that are there. We think that we have to talk about cryosphere and permafrost. Cryosphere is this very compact ice. Permafrost is this frozen soil that some parts of the world. These two act as global climate regulators. So if they are having problems, the rest will have problems. I think in India you have had some problems. You have started having problems in the glaciers in the Himalayas. In the Andes in Chile, we have a lot of problems on that. With the melting of the glaciers in the south, in Patagonia, the same thing. And the problem with glaciers is that it is not just for a couple of rainy seasons and then it will froze. No, that is a compact, very heavy ice, and it is thousands of years to take to form. So it is not something that will be regenerated easily. But it affects the climate systems in where this phenomenon is taking place. Role of science, very important. Things like electromobility and renewable energies, circular energy, circular economy, which is something to do with the involvement of the private sector also. There's new ideas of these, for instance, laws for the expanded responsibility of enterprises, meaning that when a company is selling a product, like a tire or something, a battery, something difficult to recycle, it should be incorporated in the price also the ways to recycle that product, and not to just leave it to the environment. That is things to do with circular economy, and we are trying to foster that. Of course, there is also something related to the three conventions of the Rio, the biodiversity, climate change, and the fight against drought. They were created and they're working separately all these years. Climate is only one, and we think that we should try to develop some synergy between conventions. And of course, when I mentioned loss of biodiversity, loss of biodiversity is meaning that climate change affects, of course, the amount of living animals or living beings in the region where this climate change is taking place. I mentioned science. Science, we think, is a key factor in making decisions and should not be negotiable. Some science, the IPCC is since years. There's a lot of organizations doing research and giving us reports. We think that that is something that we should take as a first into consideration and should not be negotiable. And we have to accept those reports and act in consequence to what they are showing us. As I mentioned, even if we are doing what the Paris Agreement was said to do, reports are saying that we are far more about the targets of 2 degrees, which is it is already a too high target. In that case, we will, related to science, the Chilean Minister of Science and Technology will host a virtual meeting of science and technology to take place on that day. That's Wednesday the 4th at 16 Madrid time. We had sent invitations to ministers of science and technology to gather to see how they can, put forward the science in order to make decisions. There is also Energy Day at ministerial level on the 10th of December related to problems of how to make healthier cities in mobility. We have seen there are some new topics and adaptation, ambition, coalition. All this must be taken into consideration. We had 4 years since the Paris Agreement was reached in order to arrive to a way in which the Paris Agreement would be applied, and we are not yet there. We consider that this COP will be a starting point, much more oriented towards action and policy implementation. The main, among the aims of the Chilean presidency will be the conclusion of the parts who are still missing on the Paris Agreement. In particular, Ambassador mentioned Article 6. Article 6 is important because it is one of the best ways to incorporate the private sector. Article 6 talks about corporate approaches, and we have some articles there. We have approaches based on market, Article 6, Article 4, 6.2, 6.4. But we have also approaches based in no-market solutions, which is Article 6.8, and we have to work together. This is the only article like that, like such, who was open in Katowice, and was very difficult to reach an agreement. So we have been working with the Polish presidency, and now we will take over the task of finishing. In that area, we would like also to avoid all this double accountability, proper registration, and the coordination with other systems that are being created in the world, trying to work on these carbon the market approaches. Perhaps we have to develop a way to coordinate with International Civil Association. They are doing something called Corsia, which is also with selling of emissions with airplanes. So we are trying to, we need to have a discussion, to talk and to coordinate what we are doing in that field. We have also the public registry of NDCs, the common timeframes for reporting of the NDCs. This is something technicalities, but they are important, which is in Article 4. And of course, the loss and damage mechanism that is very important for some groups of countries, and we are trying to conclude or to advance in that subject, which is a very sensitive and very political one. Of course, we have to identify adequate sources for climate finance and facilitate the implementation for all countries for adequate and effective actions to tackle climate change. That is also a very political subject. But the UNFCCC is not a technical forum. This is a political forum. It's a ministerial forum. So it is not only scientists, but also politicians discussing there. That will be a very complex agenda of negotiations. We understand that climate change is a common challenge, which can be addressed, can be solved only if all parties are determined and proactive to contribute in a constructive way. Of course, the principles of the negotiation will be consensus, of course. We acting as a presidency, we know that we are not defending our position as a Chile. So no more Chile positions. Of course, there is a Chilean delegation, but we have to act as a presidency of the COP, so we are trying to find consensus. And one of the criteria, principles, no armed criteria, nobody left behind. The very famous CBRD RC criteria, of course, and the need to engage in concrete climate actions. Of course, everything that the presidency will try to do will not be able to reach the objective if parties are not collaborating, and we will still have one more COP, and then we will still repeat the arguments that we need to do something, you know. So just to finish, joint efforts to identify consensus. We have the implementation of the Paris Agreement, acceleration, the adaptation of concrete national measures in order to solve and combat climate change. We hope that at the end we can agree on practical steps. And as Ambassador mentioned in the video, was very well presented. It's not something for us. Of course we are here, but it's for future generations, because there is no alternative planet, no alternative nothing. I mean, we have to solve the problem now. So it's a sense of urgency that we are trying to give on our presidency. No time to lose. Again, it's time for action and concrete measures and ideas. Well, that's it. Our presidency. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for the presentation of this ambitious plan. We wish you the best of success on it. Now we are going to see a small video that has been presented, offered to us by a good friend, Manas Gupta. It's 3 small videos that it's a creation, but it's a good time or good way to finish this presentation. And then I invite all of you to a cocktail, and you can ask us then any questions you want about this matter. Thank you very much.
Download Tarang online radio app from Google Play Store.
You are listening to Tarang Devotional Online Radio.